Righto, listen up. The grid's gone down. Properly down. Not just a storm took out the lines for a couple of hours flicker, but the full-blown, lights-out, end-of-days show. It's 40 degrees in the shade. The flies are already drinking the sweat off your eyelids. And your battery just died. No, not the AA. And your torch, who cares about that? I'm talking about the big one. The one keeping your kid's insulin from turning into warm soup. You've got maybe 48 hours before that vial becomes poison, or before the beer gets warm, which is arguably a secondary tragedy, but a tragedy nonetheless. You run to the backup generator. It's been sitting in the shed for 3 years next to a nest of redbacks. You pull the cord, and nothing. The fuel inside has turned to varnish. It's gloogier than old engine oil. Useless. So, you look at your solar setup. The panels are cooking in the sun, doing their job, but they're feeding a lithium battery bank that's been slowly committing chemical suicide since the day you bolted it to the wall. And now, right when the excrement has truly hit the oscillation device, you're learning the most expensive lesson of your life. The survival industry didn't sell you resilience, mate. They sold you planned obsolescence wrapped in tactical nylon and charged you a premium for the camo print. But here's what the brochure left out. There are 3 technologies that actually work. Permanently. They aren't illegal. They aren't magic. And they aren't even new. They're just buried deeper than a wombat in a drought. Today, you're going to learn why a century-old battery chemistry, a material that basically gives the middle finger to physics, and a communication network built by nobodies can make you completely independent of the system that's designed to keep you on the tee. Let's kick this off with the biggest scam in modern preparedness. The battery. Every prepper I've ever met in the Outback has a battery problem. They don't know it yet, but they do. You've got lead-acid lumps in the cellar, lithium-ion power banks in the bug-out bag, maybe some fancy AGM bricks wired to the ute. You reckon you're building a fortress. You're not. You're building a graveyard of electrochemical time bombs, and the clock is ticking louder than a crocodile's belly. Here's the thing, the energy mobs don't plaster on the packaging. Every single battery chemistry you've been told to stockpile has a built-in death sentence. It's not an accident, it's a business model. Let's start with lithium-ion, because that's the flavor of the month. Everyone loves them. Lightweight, packs a punch, charges fast. Sounds perfect, yeah? Wrong. Every single time you charge a lithium cell, these little things called dendrites start growing inside. Think of them like microscopic bindies made of metal. They grow from one side to the other, slowly, invisibly, cycle after cycle. Eventually, those sharp little buggers pierce through the separator membrane. When that happens, you get an internal short circuit. The cell heats up faster than a tin roof in January. If you're lucky, it just bricks itself. If you're unlucky, it goes into thermal runaway and turns your battery bank into a magnesium flare that you can't put out with water. It'll burn your shed down and start a bushfire that'll take out the whole postcode. But even if you don't turn your homestead into an inferno, you've still got a shelf life problem. Lithium cells degrade just by existing. Leave them sitting there doing nothing, and the electrolyte breaks down. 5 years in storage? You've lost a chunk of capacity. 10 years? You're looking at a paperweight. It's about as reliable as a politician's promise. Oh, I hear you say. I'll just stick with lead acid, the old faithful. The battery your pop had in his Holden. Proven tech, right? Yeah, proven to fail. Lead acid batteries run on a reaction between lead plates and sulfuric acid. Every time you drain that battery, lead sulfate crystals form on the plates. When you recharge, most of those crystals dissolve. Most. Not all. Over time, the leftovers build up. It's called sulfation. It's like arterial plaque for your power system. It's permanent, it's cumulative, and it slowly strangles your battery until one day it won't hold enough charge to turn over a lawnmower, let alone run a fridge. You treat it rough? Maybe 300 cycles. Baby it like a newborn and never let it drop below 50%? Maybe 500. Then it's dead. Plus, the acid eats the plates and off-gases hydrogen. Unless you want your bunker to smell like rotten eggs and potentially explode, you need ventilation. And if it freezes, the case cracks. Game over. So, what's the answer? Buy more batteries? Keep rotating stock like you're running a bloody warehouse for Bunnings? No. The answer is to stop buying disposable rubbish and look at what they used before profit margins became the only metric that mattered. So, stop mucking around with the plastic toys. The answer to your energy woes was patented back in 1901 by Thomas Edison. Yeah, the light bulb bloke. The modern energy industry has spent the last century pretending this thing doesn't exist, whistling and looking the other way. It's the nickel-iron battery, the Edison cell. And it's not just better than the rubbish you're buying, it's a different species entirely. Here's why this thing is the absolute goods. This battery is chemically immortal. The electrolyte inside is potassium hydroxide. It's alkaline. And here's the magic part, pay attention. Because this is where the science gets fair dinkum. The electrolyte doesn't participate in the chemical reaction. It doesn't get consumed. It doesn't degrade. It just sits there acting as a conductor. Think of it like a council worker leaning on a shovel watching the other blokes dig a hole. It's purely a spectator. The actual work happens between the nickel and the iron plates. When you charge and discharge, the electrolyte just watches the show. It doesn't age. What does that mean for you in the apocalypse? It means you can cycle this battery thousands of times without killing it. There are original Edison cells from the early 1900s that are still working today. We're talking about batteries that have been running since before the Sydney Harbor Bridge was even a sketch on a napkin. But it gets better. You can abuse these things in ways that would murder any other chemistry. Overcharge it? It just bubbles off the extra energy as hydrogen and oxygen. It essentially farts and forgives you. No fire, no explosion, no calling the fireys. Drain it completely to 0 volts and leave it that way for 6 months? Try that with a lead acid and it's a doorstop. Try it with lithium and it's a brick. The nickel iron cell, you just hook it up to power and it wakes up like nothing happened. G'day mate, ready for work. You can freeze the thing solid. The potassium hydroxide doesn't expand like water, so the case doesn't crack. Thaw it out, she's good as gold. You could leave a bank of these sitting in your garage for 40 years, gathering red dust and spiderwebs. Come back during the collapse, drain out the old muck, rinse the cells with distilled water, pour in fresh potassium hydroxide, and it returns to near 100% capacity. Your kids could inherit this battery. Your grandkids could use it to power their comms gear while fighting off the emu warlords. This is technology that outlives you. So, why the hell isn't this in every off-grid cabin from Broome to Tassie? Why isn't this powering every caravan and backup system in the country? 2 reasons, and neither of them has to do with performance. Reason 1, weight. Nickel and iron are heavy metals. A battery bank made of this stuff has about half the energy density of lithium ion by weight. For the same amount of power, you're lugging around 2 or 3 times the kilos. If you're trying to build a portable system to hike up the Blue Mountains, that's a deal breaker. You'll blow a disc in your back. But here's the rub. If you're building a homestead, if you're bugging in, if you're done running, weight doesn't matter. Longevity does. If your battery bank is sitting on a concrete slab in the shed, who cares if it weighs as much as a baby elephant? Nothing outlasts nickel and iron. Reason 2, business model suicide. This is the real reason. A battery that lasts a century is a catastrophe for a company that needs to sell you a new one every 3 to 5 years. Think about it. If you buy a lithium bank today for 10 grand, in 5 years, you're back at the shop with your wallet open. Over 30 years, you've bought that system 6 times. The company loves you. You're a repeat victim. But if you buy a nickel iron bank once, you're done. You're out of the market. You solved your problem permanently. And in an economy built on planned obsolescence, a permanent solution is a threat. They don't want you to own a solution, mate. They want you to rent survival. And the Edison battery breaks that model so completely, they've basically buried it. But the good news is, you can still get them. You won't find them at Super Cheap Auto or Bunnings. You have to look for niche manufacturers, mostly out of China or Eastern Europe. But they exist. You can order them, and they will outlive every other piece of gear you own. Now, here's the uncomfortable question nobody's asking. If you've got immortal energy storage, if you've got power that lasts a century, what's going to kill you next? The heat or the cold? If you can't trap heat or keep it out, all the power in the world won't save you. You'll freeze or you'll cook. And the way you've been taught to handle temperature is a lie designed to keep you buying bulky gear every winter. So, you've got your immortal battery. Good on you. Now let's talk about the thing that kills you faster than dehydration or a grumpy Taipan. Exposure. The outdoor gear industry has been feeding you a line of bull for 50 years. They reckon warmth equals thickness. They tell you that if you want to survive a bitter desert night or a frosty morning in the high country, You need to look like the Michelin Man wrapped in a sleeping bag. You waddle around looking like a stuffed tick, thinking you're safe. You're not. You're just bulky. Here's the truth. The enemy isn't cold. Cold is just a lack of heat. The enemy is conduction. Thermal energy is like a teenager with a new UT wants to move. It wants to go from hot to cold, from your body to the air. That's thermodynamics, mate. You can't negotiate with it, you can't bribe it with a slab of beer, but you can cheat it. Heat moves in three ways: conduction, convection, and radiation. Conduction is touching a hot ute bonnet in December direct transfer. Convection is the wind stealing your warmth-moving air. Radiation is the sun cooking you from millions of kilometers away. To stop the weather from ending your bloodline, you need to block all three. Your standard puffer jacket uses down or synthetic fluff to trap air. Air is a rubbish conductor, which is good. But if that air can move, you get convection. Warm air rises, cold air sinks, and you freeze. So, they trap the air in tiny pockets. That works until it gets wet. Water conducts heat 25 times faster than air. If your down jacket gets soaked in a storm, the air pockets collapse, fill with water, and you're suddenly wearing a cold, wet sponge that is actively sucking the life out of you. That's how people die of hypothermia while wearing top-of-the-line gear. So the industry just makes the jackets thicker, more fluff, more bulk. But there is a material that solves this problem so hard, it feels like a glitch in the simulation. It's called silica aerogel. The lab coats call it frozen smoke because it looks like a chunk of blue fog you can hold in your hand. Here's the drum. Aerogel is 99.8% air. It's made by taking a silica gel and replacing the liquid with gas under extreme pressure. What's left is a skeleton of silica so fine that the pores are measured in nanometers. That's a billionth of a meter. Why does that matter? Because of something called the Knudsen effect. Stick with me. This is the good bit. Air molecules need a certain amount of space to bounce around and transfer heat. The pores in aerogel are smaller than that space. The air molecules get stuck in traffic. They can't flow. They smash into the walls of the material instead of each other. This physically breaks convection. It deletes it. On top of that, the solid structure is so sparse that conduction is basically non-existent. You've got a material that stops heat dead in its tracks. A 3 mm layer of this stuff insulates as well as 3 centimeters of goose down. It's hydrophobic, so water rolls off it like rain off a duck's back. It doesn't clump, it doesn't collapse, and it doesn't care if you're wet. Here's the classic party trick. You take a wafer of aerogel, barely a centimeter thick. You put your hand on one side. On the other side, you point a blowtorch burning at 1,000 degrees. The aerogel glows orange, but your hand? Cool as a cucumber. You could hold a block of chocolate behind it, and it wouldn't even soften. NASA developed this stuff for the Mars rovers. They used it to keep electronics from freezing in space, where the temperature swings from boiling blood to shattering steel in hours. It works permanently. It doesn't degrade. It just sits there, giving thermodynamics the silent treatment forever. So, why aren't we all wearing this? Why isn't every swag and sleeping bag lined with frozen smoke? Cost is part of it. Making the stuff is finicky. But the real reason is the business model. If Kathmandu or MacPack sold you a jacket that was 3 millimeters thick, weighed nothing, kept you warm at -40, and lasted 20 years without losing a single degree of performance, they'd go broke. They need you to come back next winter for the new colors and the improved loft. A jacket that lasts a lifetime is a disaster for quarterly earnings. But you can buy it. There are companies putting it in gear now. Look for brands like Oros, or buy the raw material, usually called Pyrogel or Cryogel. It comes in flexible blankets. You can line your shelter with it, wrap your water pipes, sew it into your swag. A 5 millimeters layer gives you the insulation of 50 millimeters of foam. You've just made your bug-out location 10 times more efficient without adding bulk. You've got power. You've got warmth. But in a collapse, silence isn't golden, it's deadly. If you can't talk to your mates without the government or the raiders listening in, you're just a loot drop waiting to happen. You've got immortal power and you're wrapped in space-age fog that keeps you warmer than a pie warmer at the footy. You are physically safe, but physical safety is only half the equation in the wasteland. In a grid-down scenario, information is survival. And if you're relying on cell towers, satellites, or anything controlled by a bloke in a suit in Sydney, You're just waiting for someone to flip a switch and silence you. You need to communicate, and you need to do it in a way that can't be shut down, can't be monitored, and doesn't rely on anyone's permission. That's where the third technology comes in. This is the shadow grid. Meshtastic. Most people think they've got comms handled. They buy a Baofeng handheld radio $30 on eBay, feels tactical, comes in camo. They program in some UHF channels and think they're ready to coordinate the resistance. They're not. They're carrying a liability disguised as a tool. Here's the problem with your standard two-way radio. It's point to point. You talk, I listen. That's it. If there's a big old ridge between us, or a concrete apartment block, or just the curve of the earth because you're more than a few clicks out, we can't talk. The signal doesn't bend. It hits the dirt and dies. And in this country, terrain is everything. But the bigger problem? Every time you key up that mic, you are shouting your location to the world. Anyone with a receiver can hear you. Anyone with a directional antenna and half a brain can triangulate exactly where you are. You're not communicating. You're ringing the dinner bell for every desperate drongo within 20 kilometers. Hey, look at me. I have supplies and a radio. You might as well fire a flare gun into your own roof. And you can't encrypt those cheap analog radios easily. If you're on the amateur bands, encryption is actually illegal. So every word you say is public domain. The military solved this with frequency hopping and digital encryption. But unless you've got the budget of the SAS, you don't have that gear. So what do? The answer isn't more power, it's better topology. Enter Meshtastic. Meshtastic isn't a radio in the way you think. It's a decentralized, encrypted, text-based network that runs on the LoRa protocol that stands for long range. And it's built on a principle that makes it harder to kill than a cockroach. Every device on the network is both a client and a repeater. There's no central server. There's no Telstra exchange to burn down. It's a mesh. Here's how it works in the bush. Let's say I want to send you a message. You're 15 Ks away. On the other side of a gully, direct line of sight is impossible. With a normal radio, we're stuffed. But with Meshtastic, my device doesn't just try to shout at you. It whispers to every nearby device on the network. My message hops to a node on my neighbor's windmill. That node sees another one on a silo 3 Ks away. It hops again. Then to a solar-powered repeater someone stuck in a gum tree on a ridge. Then down to the edge of town. And finally, to you. The network routes the message through the path of least resistance, automatically. If one node goes offline, maybe a root kicked it or the battery died, the network heals itself. It finds another way around. It's anti-fragile. You can't kill it by taking out a tower because every node is the tower. The protocol trades speed for distance. You're not streaming the footy finals on this. You're sending text messages, GPS coordinates, and sensor data. A typical LoRa device uses less power than a digital watch. A single 18650 battery, the kind you pull out of an old laptop pack, can run a node for weeks. Pair it with a solar panel the size of a beer coaster, and it runs indefinitely. And the critical part? Encryption. By default, it's using AES 128 or 256. You can set up private channels. No metadata leaking to the telcos. No triangulation by casual eavesdroppers. You are operating in the radio spectrum, but you are a ghost. Unless someone has your specific key, you're just static. This is peer-to-peer communication using physics that predates governments. Radio waves don't care about borders, laws, or subscription fees. You can't ban physics. So why isn't this everywhere? Why isn't Telstra selling Meshtastic plans? Because decentralized comms is a nightmare for centralized control. They want you renting access, mate. If everyone built their own local mesh, the entire telecom business model collapses. You're not a customer anymore. You are the infrastructure. Governments don't like this tech either. A communication network they can't shut down is a network they can't bully. They can't censor it. They can't tap it easily. They can't flip a kill switch during a public safety emergency, which is usually code for, you lot are getting too rowdy. The network is owned by nobody and everybody. It's the digital equivalent of guerrilla warfare. And that's exactly why you've never heard of it. The hardware exists, the software's open source, but you won't see a glossy ad for it during the AFL Grand Final. You won't find it at the Telstra shop next to the overpriced phone cases. It lives in the hobbyist community, among the ham radio nerds and the prepper underground. You can buy Meshtastic devices right now. Brands like Heltech, T-Echo, or RAK Wireless make these little LoRa development boards. They cost anywhere from $30 to $70, about the price of a decent carton of beer. You flash them with the firmware, which is free, pair them to your phone via Bluetooth, and you're on the network. Done. No subscription, no monthly extortion, no 30-page terms of service agreement that you didn't read. You own the device, you own the network. But here's the catch, and it's a big one. One device is useless. It's as useful as an ashtray on a motorbike. It's just a radio screaming into the void. 2 devices? Now you've got point-to-point comms, better than a walkie-talkie. 5 devices in a neighborhood? You've got a mesh. 10 devices across a country town? You've got a resilient web. 50 devices in a region? You've got an unkillable network that can coordinate, warn, and organize without a single corporation getting their beak wet. The collapse won't be survived by lone wolves. Forget the movies where one bloke with a shotgun and a bad attitude survives the apocalypse. He dies of an infected tooth in week 3. Survival is a team sport. It'll be the networks, the communities that figured out how to talk when the NBN finally gave up the ghost completely. Not that it was working much before. Meshtastic is how you build that bush telegraph before the lines go dead. This is the most dangerous item on the list. Not because it hurts anyone, but because it makes you ungovernable. A person with power, warmth, and communication that doesn't depend on the system is a person the system can't squeeze. Now, let's take a step back and look at the pattern here. Why does the good stuff get buried? We've covered 3 technologies: a battery that lasts a century, insulation that defies physics, and a comms network that can't be decapitated. And I'm willing to bet my last tin of baked beans that before today, you'd never heard of any of these in a mainstream survival context. That's not an accident, mate. That's a pattern. The modern economy isn't built on solving problems. It's built on managing them. It's built on selling you temporary relief that requires a subscription or a replacement. Every product is engineered with an expiration date, not because it has to be, but because a customer who solves their problem permanently is a customer you lose forever. The nickel-iron battery is the perfect example. It was commercially available for decades. Edison marketed it for electric vehicles back when the Model T was cutting edge. It powered mining equipment, railway signals, you name it. It worked flawlessly. Then lithium-ion came along. Lighter? Yes. Sexier specs on paper? Sure. But it dies in 5 years. Car manufacturers didn't choose lithium because it was better for you, the bloke driving the car. They chose it because it was better for business. A battery that dies means a customer who comes back. It's the same reason your washing machine blows a bearing the day after the warranty expires. Aerogel has been around since the 1,930 seconds. NASA has been using it since the 90 seconds. The science is proven. But your winter coat is still stuffed with feathers that turn into porridge when it rains. Why? Because a jacket that lasts 20 years without degrading kills the apparel industry's revenue model. They need you to buy a new puffer jacket every time the fashion changes or the old one goes flat. Aerogel prevents that churn. And Meshtastic? It's open source. It works on cheap hardware. But there's no marketing budget because there's no recurring revenue. Telcos want you renting a connection, not owning one. They want you on the drip, paying your monthly tribute. This is the game. Every time a technology is too good, too permanent, or too liberating, it gets quietly pushed to the back of the shelf. It's not banned that would draw attention. It's just kept niche, hidden behind industrial jargon or left to the crazies in the shed. So, when the average punter walks into a camping store to buy survival gear, what do they see? They see the stuff designed to fail. They see the products that keep them dependent. They see the flashy lithium banks that will be bricks in a decade, the puffy jackets that tear on a wait-a-while bush, and the phones that are glorified tracking devices for the ATO. The industry doesn't just bury the good tech. They actively drown it out with noise. They spend billions advertising the inferior alternatives. They sponsor influencers to do unboxing videos of the latest tactical rubbish that wouldn't survive 5 minutes in the Pilbara. The message is clear. Buy this, upgrade next year, stay in the cycle. Be a good little consumer until the lights go out. But science doesn't care about marketing budgets. Physics doesn't care about quarterly earnings or shareholder value. And the people who understand the science, the ones who dig past the glossy brochures and ask the uncomfortable questions, they're the ones who are going to be standing when the dust settles. This is the final word, mate. You can't buy independence. You have to build it. It comes down to this. You've got 3 pieces of the puzzle. 1. Immortal energy storage that turns your shed into a permanent power station. 2. Insulation that makes you thermodynamically untouchable, whether it's a scorching, desolate highway or a freezing alpine ridge. 3. A communication grid that nobody controls and nobody can kill. These aren't just tools, they're exits. They are off-ramps from the dependency cycle that the modern economy is built on. True preparedness isn't about hoarding toilet paper like a drongo during a lockdown. It's about understanding the science they don't advertise. It's about knowing why a technology works, what makes it robust, and why the market has conveniently forgotten it exists. The nickel-iron battery doesn't just store power. It secures your future. Aerogel doesn't just keep you warm. It cheats the weather. Meshtastic doesn't just give you a radio. It makes you a node in a network that can survive the collapse of civilization. And none of this is illegal. None of it is restricted. You don't need a license. You can buy all of it right now. You just have to know it exists. The system isn't hiding it behind concrete walls or armed guards. It's hiding it behind silence. It's hiding it behind obscurity. It's hiding it behind the noise of 1,000 inferior products screaming for your attention. Now, I want to hear from you lot. What else belongs on this list? What other obsolete or niche tech have you found that solves a problem so well it's suspicious? What gear have you got in the shed that's older than you are and still works better than the plastic junk they sell today? Drop it in the comments. Share the knowledge. Because the more we know, the harder we are to control. The apocalypse might be coming, but that doesn't mean we have to make it easy for them. Stay curious. Stay independent. And remember, physics doesn't take bribes.